It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon in late autumn, the kind of day where the sun played hide and seek with the clouds. The trees lining the street were nearly bare, their leaves carpeting the ground in shades of gold and crimson. Inside the small post office where I worked, everything felt routine. I was seated at my desk, going through a pile of paperwork, the familiar sounds of ringing phones and shuffling mail providing a comforting backdrop to my mundane day. Little did I know, my life was about to take a dark turn. The phone rang, breaking the peaceful monotony. I picked it up, greeted the caller with my usual cheery tone, and waited. "Hi there, would you sign my petition?" A man's voice chimed on the other end, sounding almost friendly. A strange request, especially for a call to a post office. "What petition?" I asked, trying to gauge the purpose of his call. Before I could process his odd request, his tone shifted sharply, like flipping a switch. "Sign my petition, now." Caught off guard, I hesitated, confusion creeping in. "What petition are you talking about?" "Just sign it," he snapped, his voice rising with urgency. The shift in his tone sent a shiver down my spine. Something about it felt off, almost threatening. "Stop messing with me," I snapped back, frustration bubbling over. I had no patience for pranks, especially during work hours. The line went silent for a moment, and then he spoke again, his voice colder, dripping with menace. "Sign the petition, or I'll follow you home and hurt your dog." My heart sank. I didn't even have a dog, but the threat felt personal. "Who are you?" I tried to sound calm, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. He chuckled, a sickening sound that twisted my stomach. "Billy Joe Bob," he replied, as if it were some kind of joke. "Where are you? Let's talk face to face," I challenged, hoping to intimidate him into backing down. But he dodged my question, twisting the conversation into absurd tangents. "I'm just exercising my rights, and you people freak out over it," he said, his tone irritatingly casual. The ridiculousness of the conversation only fueled my anger. "If you're going to make threats, at least be serious about it," I retorted, trying to regain control. He muttered something, insults flying from his lips, mocking me as if I were the fool in this situation. Then, out of nowhere, he attempted to sound reasonable. "Can't we all just get along?" I wasn't buying it. "If you want to meet, say where," I told him, my patience wearing thin. In a moment of recklessness, I even gave him my address, daring him to show up. His frustration bubbled over, and he shouted, "You're the one being difficult," before launching into another round of insults. The conversation spiraled into chaos. I felt my heart racing, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I tried to keep the upper hand. "I'm not afraid of you," I asserted defiantly, but deep down, I felt a nagging sense of dread. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get any stranger, he changed his tone once more, attempting to sound clever. "You thought today was just another day, but guess what? Surprise!" A loud gunshot rang out through the phone, shattering the calm of the post office. My heart stopped. Had I just heard a gunshot? I sat in stunned silence, the world around me fading away as I processed the chaos of the moment. Then, something inside me snapped. Laughter bubbled up from deep within, almost in disbelief. "I'm not going anywhere today," I said, my voice steady as I hung up the phone, a strange mix of fear and defiance swirling inside me. The office fell eerily quiet. The usual sounds of machines and chatter seemed to fade, leaving only the echo of that chilling call. I sat frozen at my desk, my heart racing, the words of the caller replaying in my mind. Who was he? What did he want? As the minutes turned into hours, I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to me. I finished my shift with my mind racing, every little sound making me jump. The feeling that I was being watched crept in, tightening its grip around me. That evening, as I locked up the post office, I felt the chill of the night settling in. The streets were empty, the only sound being the wind rustling through the trees. I hurried to my car, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow lurking in the darkness. I drove home, each streetlight flickering like a warning as I passed beneath them. My heart pounded in my chest, a reminder of that voice on the phone. When I finally reached my apartment, I rushed inside and locked the door, trying to push the fear away. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I avoided the windows, the thought of someone lurking outside sending chills down my spine. Instead, I curled up on the couch, trying to distract myself with a movie, but every creak of the building sent me into a panic. Around midnight, just as I was beginning to relax, my phone rang again. My heart raced as I glanced at the caller ID. Unknown number. I hesitated, torn between answering and ignoring it. After a moment, I answered, my voice shaking. Hello? Silence hung in the air for a moment, and then I heard it a whisper, barely audible. You should have signed the petition. Panic surged through me, and I slammed the phone down, my breath quickening. This was no longer a joke, it felt like a sinister game. My heart raced as I debated whether to call the police, but I hesitated, uncertain if they could do anything. I spent the rest of the night on edge, every sound magnified in the silence. Sleep eluded me as I kept the lights on, staring at the phone, half expecting it to ring again. The next morning, I reported the incident to my boss, who shrugged it off as a prank. People get bored and make silly calls sometimes, he said, dismissing my concerns. But I knew this was more than a prank, it felt real and dangerous. As the days passed, the calls continued. Every time I answered, it was the same whisper, taunting me. You should have signed the petition. Each time, I felt the grip of fear tighten around me, making it harder to breathe. I started avoiding public places, terrified of running into the caller or anyone connected to him. I stopped going out at night, preferring the safety of my locked apartment. I even changed my phone number, hoping that would end the torment. But the whispers didn't stop. It was as if he had seeped into my life, his presence lurking in the shadows. Friends began to notice my anxiety, and I found myself withdrawing from social gatherings. I felt like a prisoner in my own life, and the isolation only deepened my fear. One evening, as I sat in the dim light of my living room, the phone rang again. My heart raced as I picked it up, knowing it was him. Hello? I answered, my voice trembling. You should have signed the petition, he whispered, the words dripping with malice. I hung up, my hands shaking as I threw the phone across the room. The screen shattered on impact, but the act of destruction felt futile against the torment I was enduring. I could still hear his voice, echoing in my mind, relentless and suffocating. Desperate to escape the cycle of fear, I sought help. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in anxiety and trauma. During our sessions, I poured out my fears, my feelings of helplessness, and the torment of those whispers. It felt good to finally share the weight I had been carrying alone. But no matter how much I tried to confront my fear, it always lingered in the back of my mind. One night, after a particularly intense session, I returned home, exhausted. I locked the door and settled on the couch, determined to distract myself with a book. As I read, the silence of the apartment began to feel oppressive. My mind wandered to the caller and his threatening words. Just as I was getting lost in my thoughts, my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. With trembling hands, I answered, the familiar dread washing over me. "Hello," I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. Silence hung in the air before the whisper returned. "You should have signed the petition." In a fit of rage, I screamed into the phone. "What do you want from me?" Silence filled the line, and for a moment, I thought he had hung up. Then he spoke, his voice dangerously calm. "You'll find out soon enough." Panic surged through me, and I slammed the phone down, my breath coming in short gasps. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. I felt like a puppet on strings, and the caller was the puppeteer, controlling my every move. After that night, I decided I couldn't let him control me any longer. I took steps to regain my life. I reached out to friends, reconnecting with the people I had pushed away. I started going out again, refusing to let fear dictate my choices. But the whispers never fully faded. Even in the company of friends, I would catch myself glancing around, expecting him to appear. I was living in a constant state of vigilance, and it was exhausting. One evening, I was out with a group of friends, laughing and enjoying the night, when the phone rang again. My heart dropped, the familiar dread creeping back in. I stepped away from the group to answer it, my hands trembling. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaking. But this time, it wasn't his whisper. It was a different voice, a man's voice, calm and measured. "You need to listen to me. This is serious." I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Who is this?" "I'm a detective," he replied. "We've been tracking the man who's been harassing you." Hope bloomed in my chest. "What do you mean? What do you know?" The detective explained that they had received multiple reports of a man making threatening calls to various individuals in the area. They had traced the calls back to a specific number, and he urged me to remain vigilant. "Stay in public places, and if he shows up, don't confront him. Call us immediately," he instructed, his tone grave. I nodded, feeling a sense of empowerment wash over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a plan. The whispers that had haunted me for so long were now being pursued by someone who understood the gravity of the situation. Over the next few weeks, I took precautions, following the detective's advice. I stayed close to my friends, avoiding secluded areas, and carried my phone at all times, ready to call for help. But the whispers continued, each one gnawing at my sanity. They felt like a constant reminder of my vulnerability, and I was determined to break free. One night, as I walked home with my friend Sarah, I felt a sense of safety enveloping me. We were chatting and laughing, the joy of friendship lifting the heavy weight I had carried for so long. But then, as we passed a dark alley, I caught a glimpse of a figure lurking in the shadows. Panic gripped my chest. "Did you see that?" I asked Sarah, my heart racing. She turned, her expression shifting to concern. "What? What is it?" "Someone's watching us," I said, scanning the darkness. Just then, a voice pierced the night, a chilling whisper that sent chills down my spine. "You should have signed the petition." I froze, terror paralyzing me. There he was, the man from my nightmares, emerging from the shadows with that twisted smile plastered on his face. I felt Sarah's grip tighten on my arm as we both instinctively stepped back, adrenaline coursing through us. "Run!" I shouted, pulling Sarah with me as we darted down the street. Our footsteps echoed against the pavement, the sound of our panic resonating in the night. I could hear him behind us, his laughter echoing in the air. "You can't escape." We turned into another alley, my heart racing as I searched for a place to hide. I spotted an old, abandoned building, its windows boarded up and doors hanging ajar. With no time to think, we rushed inside, the darkness swallowing us whole. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to catch my breath as fear gripped me. I could hear Sarah's heavy breathing beside me, her eyes wide with terror. "What do we do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just stay quiet," I replied, straining to listen for any sounds outside. Footsteps echoed in the alley, drawing closer. My heart raced, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The whispers returned, taunting me, echoing in my mind. "You should have signed the petition." Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a sliver of light cut through the darkness. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't be him. But to my surprise, a police officer stepped inside, flashlight in hand. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I rushed toward him, my voice shaky as I recounted the events that had led us to this moment. The officer listened intently, and when I finished, he assured me that they would look into the matter. He provided me with a number to call if I felt threatened again, and I felt a flicker of hope. With the officer by my side, I felt a sense of safety returning, a shield against the darkness that had haunted me. As we stepped outside, I spotted the figure again, lurking at the end of the alley. But this time, he seemed different, nervous, agitated. The officer called out, "Hey, you there?" The man turned and ran, disappearing into the shadows, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of control over my life. The following days were filled with tension as the police investigated, tracking down leads and interviewing witnesses. I learned that I wasn't the only one who had received threatening calls from the same man. He had a history of harassing individuals, using fear as his weapon. The whispers that had tormented me for so long began to fade, replaced by the sound of justice being served. Months later, as I sat in my apartment, the phone ringing felt like a distant memory. I had regained my life, learning to live without the constant fear that had once consumed me. I realized that the whispers could no longer control me. I had taken back my power. And as the autumn leaves fell outside my window, I smiled, knowing that I had faced my fears and emerged stronger than ever. The whispers may have started as a threat, but they had transformed into a lesson in resilience, teaching me that even in the darkest moments, hope and strength could prevail.